You can't expect men in this society, a Western society, in which they have been traditional ideas inculcated in the minds of the total population as to what women should and must do, as to what blacks should and must do. You can't expect these men overnight to really jump on the bandwagon and say there's a change. It's coming, and they won't be able to stop it. It's coming.
It's coming. Prophetic and powerful words from the late Shirley Chisholm, the first black woman to serve in Congress. The woman known as Fighting Shirley could sense that the dial of history was turning, not least because she had moved it forward for some American women and for minorities seeking higher office. When Chisholm entered politics in the late 60s, America was grappling with deep civil unrest and social upheaval. The forces of progress, women, minorities, college students, they were propelling the nation toward a more inclusive future, while the status quo fought fiercely to keep it tethered to the past, much like we see today. The daughter of Caribbean immigrants, Chisholm was born and raised in Brooklyn. Her leadership qualities were recognized early on by her professors at Brooklyn College, who encouraged her to run for political office. But Chisholm said she faced what she called a double handicap. She was both black and female. She went on to pursue a career in childhood education, but not content to be slowed down by her so-called double handicap, she worked at the grassroots level, joining local chapters of the League of Women Voters and the Democratic Party. In 1968, Chisholm's community in Bedford-Stuyvesant urged her to run for Congress. Once again, she found herself being called to lead by those who recognized something special in her. One day, a woman showed up at Chisholm's door and handed her an envelope with $9.62 inside. The money had been gathered by several women in the neighborhood who wanted her to run. In her hands, Chisholm understood that she held her first campaign donation. Speaking to Jet Magazine, she said she closed the door, sat down, and cried. That moving gesture was all she needed to convince her to run, and the first thing she did was assemble an all-female campaign staff. The playing field at the time was dominated by men who did not take her seriously at all. Of my two handicaps, being female put many more obstacles in my path than being black. Defying the odds, she went on to win by a 2-to-1 margin, making history. Even then, she continued to face hostility from her male colleagues, but she would not be deterred. Speaking to the New York Times, she said, quote, "I'm supposed to be seen and not heard, but my voice will be heard. I have no intention of being quiet," end quote. Fighting Shirley went on to serve for 7 terms in Congress, introducing more than 50 pieces of legislation and tirelessly advocating for racial and gender equality. In 1972, she again made history by entering the Democratic presidential primary. She announced her candidacy in her hometown of Brooklyn.
I am not the candidate of Black America, although I am black and proud. I am not the candidate of the women's movement of this country, although I am a woman, and I'm equally proud of that. I am the candidate of the people of America.
Immediately after announcing her intent to run, her gender became the story. CBS anchor Walter Cronkite announced a new hat. Rather, a bonnet was tossed into the Democratic presidential race today. Shirley Chisholm was blocked from participating in televised primary debates. Only after taking legal action was she allowed to participate in the final debate. On the campaign trail, she focused on building a coalition of the marginalized, consisting of women, minorities, students, and the working class. She was often flanked by these same groups during campaign stops, what became dubbed as the Chisholm Trail. Despite raising a modest $95,000, she managed to get her name on 12 primary ballots, collecting 152 delegate votes, 10% of the total. 56 years after Shirley Chisholm became the first black woman in Congress, 52 years after she became the first woman to run for a major party's presidential nomination, and 50 years after Chisholm declared it's coming, Kamala Harris stands as the first black woman to run for president on a major party ticket, following the path led by Chisholm. Harris has already made history, fueling a record-breaking $310 million fundraising haul for the month of July. Her candidacy has breathed new life into the Democratic Party, with 2/3 of last month's donations coming from first-time donors. At stake in this election is democracy itself. Speaking last month in New Orleans, Harris reminded us, quote, "We each have the power to decide what kind of country we want to live in," end quote. And as we confront threats aiming to roll back progress for women and minorities, Shirley Chisholm speaks to us from the grave. Quote, "I ran because someone had to do it first. I ran because most people think the country is not ready for a black candidate, not ready for a woman candidate. The next time a woman runs, or anyone from a group that the country is not ready to elect to its highest office, I believe he or she will be taken seriously from the start. The door is not open yet, but it is ajar," end quote. Joining me now to discuss the historic gravity of this moment is political strategist and MSNBC political analyst Juanita Tolliver. She's also the host of Crooked Media's What a Day podcast. Juanita, this is an important conversation to have because for all that Vice President Harris is the candidate who is representing the advance of democracy in America, while Donald Trump is the opposite of that, there is something electrifying about the moment, about this coalition that Shirley Chisholm spoke about 50 years ago actually coming together today.
Right. It's coming together, and it's coming together in a massive way that I'm not sure Shirley Chisholm could have even predicted, Allie, because 2 weeks ago today, Black women kicked things off by organizing online, calling everyone in, calling people together to recognize the history we are sitting in and experiencing in real time. And what happened after that is that call was replicated, as you know, by men, Black men, white dudes, white women, Latinos, and Asian Americans and Indigenous Native people in this country to show their galvanizing support for Kamala Harris. And it truly does personify the call for unity that Shirley Chisholm communicated all those years ago when she called for those marginalized groups to get together to wield their collective political power. As you mentioned, in 1972, her goal was not to win the election, but to influence the Democratic platform. She wanted to make it clear to elected officials that these individuals would not be ignored and their policies must respond to their needs. And similar today, I think that Vice President Harris has an opportunity to stand in front of this coalition who is looking to push her to make history again as potentially the first woman elected president of this country. But that power has to sustain. That momentum has to sustain. And the numbers that you recited earlier are indicative of an initial power, but I think they'll sustain because on top of the money raised, on top of all of that, you have new voter registration hitting massive spikes with Vote.org reporting that 85% of those voters are young people, the same young people who delivered history-defying results for Democrats in 2022, the same young people who are forcing this country forward in the same way young people did in the late 60s. And that's promising energy.
What's the difference and what's the same? Because Shirley Chisholm faced mockery, literally mockery. People laughed when she would give speeches. A lot of people loved her and thought she was fantastic, but others who didn't see the change, they just thought it was a joke. And she never respond. I mean, she would sometimes laugh back. She didn't ever respond in a way that felt defensive. And now you see Donald Trump mocking Kamala Harris on several fronts, and Kamala Harris sort of also brushes it off.
Right. So I appreciate you going back to the mockery that Chisholm faced. It came from network executives who decided to not have her on stage on major debate days and televised events. It came from men, even in her 1968 congressional run, who would say, shouldn't you be at home cooking? Shouldn't you be at home taking care of your husband? And it came from, sadly, members within the Democratic Party who refused to endorse her, who mocked her publicly to massive publications from the New York Times to Jet Magazine. And so that's why she said her identity as a woman caused more issues for her than her identity as Black, because unfortunately some of that mockery also came from the Black community. However, what's different now is that people are standing up to that mockery, not only from Vice President Harris leading the charge, but people are standing up for her, calling out the racism, calling out the misogyny, calling out the misogynoir, calling out the abuse that she's facing. And that fortified support is something that's going to carry this election and Harris's campaign forward. I do think it's interesting also when I think about Vice President Harris and how she was able to respond to that moment of Donald Trump at the NABJ conference and say, it's the same old show. Allie, she's been here before, whether it was serving as district attorney or attorney general of California, or only the third Black woman senator in a body that's 240 years old. She knows exactly what this is like. She knows what it's like to be the only and the first in a room, and she stood up to it. And that's why I think she'll be unfazed by whatever else Donald Trump throws at her.
Juanita, great to see you as always. Thank you. Juanita Tolliver is the host of Crooked Media's What a Day podcast and an MSNBC political analyst.